Hello there. Welcome to another episode of Just a Few. My name is Patrick Antwine. Thank you for joining me and for being a part of this ministry. In this platform, I have the opportunity to provide biblical responses to questions from people just like you. And as always, if you have a question and you'd like for me to attempt an answer to that question, please feel free to submit a question, preferably via email. And the email address will be on your screen, and I'll try to provide you with a response as soon as I can. Today's question has to do with a biblical perspective on relationships. So let me read the question for you. Question is, what does it mean to be unequally yoked? Let me begin by saying that expression, that term is, you could say, borrowed from the world of agriculture, the sphere of agriculture, plowing and so on, where in ancient times, farmers will plow their fields with animal-drawn or driven plows, and the plowman will be behind controlling the plow as the animals, whether it's horses or mules or donkeys or oxen, will be pulling at the front, and the plow is going through the soil. So that's what it means to be yoked together. Now, the Bible speaks of being unequally yoked. And the concern here of the Apostle Paul and the scriptures is that even when you go back to plowing with oxen, let's say, two animals yoked to each other to pull a plow, in order for them to function effectively, they must be equally yoked. So you tend to find that animals of different sizes, different species, you don't want a horse and a donkey being yoked together. That's problems. The horse is going at one speed and the donkey can't keep up, and the donkey may end up with a broken neck or something. Or even different temperaments. If one animal is much more aggressive than the other, those type of things are what you call, in the realm of plowing, unequally yoked animals. And that could result in hurt or even the death of one of the animals, or the person plowing, following with the plow after. And so the Apostle Paul now in 2 Corinthians chapter 6 warned believers, Christians, about being unequally yoked with unbelievers. So he's really speaking about relationships, although in a number of cases, most people refer to it strictly in the realm of Christian marriages, but it's not the only application to what the Apostle Paul is saying. So I'm going to give you 4 possible applications to help you to understand what this concept of being unequally yoked is all about. Let me read the scripture first in 2 Corinthians chapter 6. I'll read just 2 verses 14 and 15. It says, "Do not be unequally yoked together with unbelievers. For what fellowship has righteousness with lawlessness?" Now, this has nothing to do with a racial issue. It is more a spiritual issue. Keep that in mind. "And what communion has light with darkness? And what accord has Christ with Belial?" That's a word for the power of darkness, Satan. "Or what part has a believer with an unbeliever?" And you'll go on along that line. And the Corinthian believers had become guilty of allowing the ways of the world around them in the city of Corinth to creep into the church, and believers were getting into all types of problematic relationships with people who Paul considered to be not right in terms of the partnerships that were being forged. In some cases, it was actually marriages also. But let me share with you those 4 areas to help illustrate what being unequally yoked can be. First is the area of friendships. Any Christian involving themselves in friendly relationships with non-Christians, you need to be watchful of that, because the differences of values, moral and spiritual values, there might be a clash of it, and somebody's going to have to compromise. And very often the Christian has to compromise his conviction or her convictions in order to maintain that friendship, because some of the things the other person may want to engage in, the Christian might not want to. Else, if you do want to get involved in the type of conversations and activities that the other person who's an unbeliever is, it means that you are willing to compromise. And as a Christian, you will either influence others or be influenced by them. And you need to consider that in terms of the people who you consider your friends. In our culture here, well, not so much, I don't know, the wider Caribbean, but in particular in Trinidad, you'll hear the older people have said for generations, friends will carry you, but they may not bring you back, which means your friends may encourage you along a certain line, but when trouble comes, they are not there to help you to get you back to where you were. They leave you there. They throw you under the bus, as it were. So friendships, it could become unequally yoked. Second, of course, what is generally applied in marriages, that if a Christian chooses to become married to a person who is a non-Christian, there may be problems arising there because, again, of spiritual convictions and the type of things that you may want to get involved in spiritually as a Christian. The person may have no interest in that or might have a different perspective. And that is a formula for a bit of disharmony in the relationship. And that is what the Bible is trying to avoid in your marital relationship. By the way, it's possible for you to marry a Christian and be unequally yoked because of a difference in perspective on certain aspects of ministry or even your desires. You might be very passionate about getting more involved in ministry in a local church or even on the mission field. And if your partner might be a Christian but is not as passionate about those things, it could create problems. And you need to be very careful with that a person could be unequally yoked even with a Christian, not just Paul, of course, was talking about unbelievers. Business partnership is the third area, that you could be, as a Christian, getting yourself involved in some sort of business arrangement with someone who might be a friend, but that person doesn't share the same spiritual convictions as you, and so they have no problem cutting corners, cheating the customers, cheating on their taxes, and passing money underhand or receiving money illegitimately with bribes and so on. You as a Christian now may say, I can't do that. Well, then you are unequally yoked with an unbeliever who has no problem doing things that you have a problem with. So watch out for those business relationships that could be unequal yokes. And then finally, I think even with ministry connections, different ministries have different philosophies of ministries. Different pastors have different sense of values of things that they will do and not do. So that if you might find yourself in a sometimes ministers say, let's come together and work together. And you might think, well, we are serving the same Lord. But then that person has no problem. Their emphasis is only getting as much money as you can from the people over and over. And you might find you're fleecing the flock. I can't subscribe to that. You might find yourself in an unequal yoke ministry-wise, that it may not be unbelievers, but it could be Christians who just doesn't share the same convictions and philosophy of ministry as you do. So you'll be amazed at some people who call themselves ministers and the type of activities they get themselves engaged in, and you could be unequally yoked in that regard also. So the question asks, what does it mean to be unequally yoked? And yes, I know Paul focused on unequally yoked with unbelievers, but I say there are broader applications to that also. Paul later on, well, in the previous letter in 1 Corinthians 15, he was talking about the resurrection, and he warned them about people who will influence them to believe that the resurrection is not real and so on. And he says in 1 Corinthians 15:33, do not be deceived. Evil company corrupts good habits. And sometimes that company that you keep leading you into an unequal yoke might even be a Christian with a different perspective and a different set of values. And you need to be careful about that type of relationship also. So in closing, being unequally yoked has to do with the types of relationships we enter into or engage in as Christians. Watch out for the type of relationships. Is this healthy, or is it, as Paul says in 1 Corinthians 15:33, evil company? It might be openly evil, but compromising on values. And that's what it means to be unequally yoked, whether with unbelievers or sometimes even with Christians, that you should not be getting yourself involved in certain types of ministries and activities. My name is Patrick Antwine. Trust that my response helps to clarify to you what that term means. So until the next time, grace and peace be